everyone.
I'm back, baby.
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm great. Everybody else sucks.
Oh,
no. It's every nightmare I've ever had.
Excuse me?
It's time to check the link.
Pretty crazy, huh? But it doesn't matter because none of this has anything to do with the show.
You know what? You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in football.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No.
What's up, you docs? It's week 2. Jeff Ratcliffe talking rankings to get you ready for fantasy football. Week 2, hopefully you're 1-0. Hopefully you got Elijah Mitchell on all of your teams. We're going to talk about him just a little bit today. As always, make sure you're following Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe. Make sure you're checking out his work on FTN and SiriusXM and all the good stuff he has going on. And if you haven't checked out The Athletic, theathletic.com/BetsTV, all capitals of this network. Also over there, first free month. And does code, I don't know, Tino, is my code still good before I say it? You can flash it on the screen if it is. If it's not, I don't want to say what it is. So there you go. Code all in still get you 20% off at FTN to go check out Jeff. I just want to make sure. I don't want to give out the code if it wasn't. Jeff, nobody cares about your team, but I do. We're 1-0 in most of the leagues that you care about?
No.
Rough start
Ryan
to the season.
Fitzpatrick in a 2-quarterback league going down right away kind of crushes the soul, right? But it is what it is. I mean, injuries happen. It's a part of fantasy football. And everybody out there who is absolutely devastated by a week 1 loss, come on. It's a week 1 loss. There's plenty of time still to go. We'll quote Aaron Rodgers. We still have 16 more weeks left in this thing. Well, maybe if we're lucky, we have 16 more weeks if we can get to play in that championship game. But regardless, still a lot of football to go. Definitely not 1-0. Also, I'm in too many leagues. It is utterly impossible for me to do a national TV show from 8 to noon and then update a website from noon to 1 while in a car traveling home from New York City to pay attention to every single league. And I definitely had Trey Sermon starting in 2 leagues last week that I was not able to update. So lesson learned. I'm going from 15 down to probably 8 next year. I got to half it because it's just too many.
I was going to even say down to like 2 or 3. I'm with you. The only league, I had him in one spot. How many leagues are we in, Jeff? 20 plus? One league, Odell Beckham was active. And I had all the way up till 4 o'clock just because I forgot about it in the morning. And then once football comes on and watch it, I forgot to go back and check those teams.
Yep.
So that's what happens. But yeah, I pointed to Heineke. We get Tyler Heineke at quarterback for the Washington football team. Real quick, Adrian Bray, I appreciate that. So I was completely tongue-in-cheek, Jeff, with the Aaron Rodgers thing on Sunday, and I was saying, you know what if he was so disgruntled and he knew he couldn't get away from his team, so his only recourse was to sabotage the team? It's surprising how many people took it seriously, and somebody was like, well, then they get the number 1 pick, and I said, no, because he wins just enough games, and they don't get to evaluate Jordan Love and know if he's the answer. Like, this is how deep it goes, and people are still taking it seriously. But the serious thing we need to talk about, Jeff, Elijah Mitchell. Whether you won him or not, there's the people out there that need to know. This is the biggest topic of the week, no question about it. It's been the biggest topic about waivers. So Elijah Mitchell, he's the lead. We know that. We've been Shanahan a million times. Whether or not you're a believer, and I want you to include this in your answer, Jeff, of whether or not you're a Trey Sermon fan, because you can sit at the situation and say, look, Trey Sermon, if you're like me and say he has better 3-down ability mainly because of his pass blocking. Elijah Mitchell, I drew some comparisons to Emory Hunt actually compared him to Tiki Barber because of his upright style, and that's why he's so upright, because he carries the ball like Tiki so he doesn't fumble. But also like Tevin Coleman, the one cut, he can get tripped up. Whatever it might be, whether you're an Elijah Mitchell fan or a Trey Sermon fan, whatever the situation is, are you rolling him out there with 1, confidence, 2, how soon until we get Shanahan?
I guess we kind of already did because of the Trey Sermon thing. I mean, fool us how many times? Shame on us at this point. All right, so I like them both. If I'm going to go back to my pre-draft evaluations, I did like Trey Sermon, so lightly used, so we didn't even get to really see what he was fully capable of at the college level, but had the skill set that was really appealing for that offense. They traded up to get him. They prioritized him. Elijah Mitchell was the biggest thing. Elijah Mitchell was in some ways an afterthought, but he was not undrafted. That's important. He actually went on day 3 of the NFL draft, tested really well. Now, he ran behind a very good offensive line that has made a number of backs here recently out of Louisiana looked pretty good, but still at the same time, the athletic skills were there. So I do like both of them. Now, do I have any confidence in them this week? Not that much. I'm ranking. I will get into the rankings, I guess, here throughout the course of the show. But I'm ranking Mitchell as a flex option. I'm not using Sermon this week because I want to see it. I've said this numerous times. Like, people legit started Michael Carter last week, which I don't know where that came from. People legit started Sony Michel last week. I don't know where that came from. I would rather have a guy go off on my bench and me be wrong than a guy put up a massive dud in my starting lineup and me be wrong. So I'm willing to be wrong about Sermon, and hopefully I am wrong about him because I have him on several rosters right now. I don't want both of them too, Jake. I was telling people that yesterday, and I know that was not the advice they wanted to hear, but I don't know about you. I've seen this so many times with people playing fantasy football. If they have both backs, they are going to play one of them and it's going to be the wrong one. And then the next week they're going to play the other and it's going to be the wrong one. And fantasy is already frustrating enough that I'd rather just have one piece of the backfield and hopefully it's the right piece, and then we'll play it from there. But yeah, I think we're going to get some Shanahan-nanigans. I can't even say that right.
Yeah, Shanahanigans.
Yeah, with the goofy stuff on the wall and the mozzarella sticks. Yeah, we're going to have some of that happen here really quickly with that backfield. We've already seen it over and over and over again. These backs will get in there. Everybody looks good in that backfield, so it doesn't matter who gets the ball. We just don't know who's going to get the ball and when.
So, and that's what I've said, this the longest time. We did an off-season show where I said that. I said, Shanahan has the Midas touch when it comes to running backs. He turns them all to gold. That's the only reason we knew Jeff Wilson was a thing, is because of Shanahan. Let's be honest about Jeff Wilson and who he is. So I'm higher than you are, mostly because of this is, again, this is coming from somebody like you. I had Sermon higher. You can go look at my pre-draft rankings. Actually, Mitchell was, I think, tier 4. And I want to say Sermon, I'm believing, was tier 2 off the top of my head. So there's a gap for me, mostly because of what I set up the question with of the difference in talent. Would I be shocked if Shanahan turns to Sermon this week? Absolutely not. We've done it a million times. But at the same time, if I went out there and I got him, if I went after Elijah Mitchell, and I did in my home league, which happens to also be a keeper league, so I went more aggressive in that because he can be kept for $10, all that. I'm just saying, for out there, if your fab hasn't run, if keeper is involved, I would be more aggressive in case it is, in case he's Mostert now, and he just kind of stays in the lead. So I have him higher. I have him at 18. I think that I would play him over Barkley. This is the guys I have right behind. Actually, you know what? Because Alex put this in here, I'm going to do it, Jeff. Don't look, because there's something we do when we're trying to figure it out. And I know we don't do set rankings on this show because they can change by game time. But there's something we do when we're trying to figure out if we would play blank versus blank. And it's something I don't think you and I have done yet. I think we meet to make a list. That's what we do. We make a list. Thank you, Chris Jericho. I'm going to live that till the day I die for making a list. I should have had it. Oh, he's way up there. I can't reach him. So we're making a list, Jeff. You tell me. In my rankings, if you disagree, again, your rankings will change, my rankings will change. But as of today, Elijah Mitchell or who would you play? Elijah Mitchell or Damian Harris against the Jets for everybody out there?
Damian Harris, and I totally didn't get that because I don't watch wrestling and haven't since probably the mid-'80s. So that would put me at about
everybody
5
else
or 6
did.
years old. I know who Chris Jericho is, though. I at least know that.
So you got that. That's part of the intro, by the way. Well, he actually says it in the intro. You just made the list. So Damian Harris, you're going Damian Harris. Elijah Mitchell or Saquon Barkley tomorrow night, depending on when you're watching this.
I think you have to play Barkley. I know you disagree, but I think the snap share increases this week as well. It was 29 snaps last week out of 61 possible. I don't think it's going to be like 50 out of 60 if they play the same amount of snaps, but I do think we see the snap share increase, and I don't know. I think you're in a position where you almost have to play him based on what you have on your roster.
I'll push back on this. Is the major concern we had about the Giants is still the major concern. That offensive line is beyond abysmal, and they're facing the Washington front. So, and a short week, and the fact that the Barkley's still not being 100%. So I get it, and I had Barkley at 18 versus Elijah Mitchell. I had Barkley at 18 last week, and I said I would risk it. So. I see the argument for Barkley. I think he has the higher upside of being the potential top 5, although I don't think that happens this week, but I get it. All right, so how about this? Elijah Mitchell or the mysterious case of Tyson Williams?
Right now, Tyson Williams, but it's like you're playing with fire with both of those guys, really, essentially. I mean, Tyson Williams, who's going to be active on this roster? first and foremost, because we know one of them is coming up. My money is not on Le'Veon Bell based on what Harbaugh said. So is Freeman out there? That changes Tyson Williams' usage as well. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But I still think he's slightly ahead of Latavius Murray, and I'm not willing to use Murray. So I actually do have Williams a tick ahead of Mitchell.
My biggest concern is that after he took that shot, he never came back in that game. And I know there's nothing reports about injury, which makes me think it's the fact that he also got blown up in that one blocking play, which it's a dicey situation. All right, how about this one? Myles Gaskin or Elijah Mitchell?
I guess Myles Gaskin. He was the lead in that backfield. Wow. By the way, people, Malcolm Brown, you shouldn't even have him. You shouldn't even been drafted, much less why is he on rosters? There's no value to Malcolm Brown. He's not going to win you a championship. Get him off your rosters.
Elijah Mitchell or Javonte Williams?
Now we're starting to talk. I would go Elijah Mitchell there. Yeah.
All right. Elijah Mitchell or Hunt, Melvin Gordon, Chase Edmonds, Mike Davis. Those are the guys behind them. Any of those guys over Elijah Mitchell?
Nope.
Okay. So Elijah Mitchell about 24 on my list. Again, make sure you check out Jeff's ranks and all his work. But that's where we differ. A little bit of gap. I'm shooting for it. I think that Elijah Mitchell or Najee Harris. Come on, Rory. I love you, dude. I actually know Rory personally. But there was only one running back in the NFL on the field for 100% of the snaps. Not Christian McCaffrey, not obviously Saquon Barkley, not Dalvin Cook, not anybody you could think of. The one running back on the field for 100% of the snaps was Najee Harris. Zero concerns about Najee Harris.
And Ben's arm still looks shot. Absolutely. 6.2 average depth of target in that game. He cannot throw the ball downfield. They have to lean on the run. This is a Raiders defense that just allowed 2 rushing scores as well.
Bingo.
To the backfield, to the Ravens backfield. So, yeah, Najee Harris. Last week was disappointing. You knew that was going to be tough. It's always tough when you have to go into Buffalo. This week, different story.
All right, so let me see if we can get any of these questions in here before we jump into the next conversation, because we hit enough on Elijah Mitchell. By the way, real quick on the strategy, while I'm looking at the questions, you can answer this, Jeff. I covered it yesterday with Lauren on the waiver show, but assuming it sounds like you're on the same page, you haven't answered this, but it sounds like you are, is in that absolutely go get Mitchell, but absolutely, if you can, sell high and buy low on Sermon.
Not exactly
straight
the
up.
Same move. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm on that one 100%. No, I threw out, I always have fab recommendations in my waivers article. I had 35%. Somebody actually hit me up and they're like, I went 35% and won him by $1. So that was good. Not 51%, not 60%, not 100%. And I actually am in a league that is a little bit more conservative, and I went 23%, and you're able to see on some of the sites what people bid. There was a bid in at 22%. I ended up getting him in a league where did I absolutely need him? No, but I did need some help there, and I'm happy to grab him. And if he's a piece I can use, that's good. Or as you mentioned, if he's a piece I can move on from quickly, then I'm going to do that as well. Look to the person who had Mostert. They're panicking. Look to people who are in situations where they're already thin at running back. Maybe they've lost guys like Gus Edwards already if you drafted a little bit early, and try and make some moves. And if you're trading, don't just send blind offers. Reach out to somebody and see what they might want. Have an adult conversation, and you'd be surprised at the results.
That's the biggest thing. I say that every single year too, Jeff, is first evaluate their roster. Like you could say, hey, I don't need Deontay Johnson. Let me go after this guy's running back, but he might only have 2 quality running backs and a glut of wide receivers too. It's not going to mean anything to you. Got to put yourself in their situation. Like you said, open the dialogue with at least, hey, this is why I was thinking you might like this trade. And yes, of course, you don't want to send your best offer right out of the gate because you do want to try and always buy the cheapest you can, but don't be disrespectful in it. And the fact that, like, if you're on the, again, put yourself on the other side if you thought the trade was coming in. By the way, I know you mentioned your league. My home league, I mentioned it was a keeper. So if you get them off the waivers, you can keep the player for $10 the next year out of $200. So that's part of the value. I also know a guy in our league lost Gus Edwards. Who else did he lose? Oh, Mostert and J.K. Dobbins. So I went 53. Next closest he was at 42. But again, that's knowing my league. So I was with you. My highest recommendation in my waiver article was 35 to 40%. But knowing your league, and this is why I say this all the time, you know your league best. I knew 40 wasn't going to get it in my league. And I was in a situation where I have James Robinson as my third running back, and I don't want to start James Robinson. Let's talk about that real quick. What are you doing? Are you benching James Robinson everywhere like I am until we figure out if, one, Urban Meyer is going to stick around, or two, he gets his head out of you-know-where?
No, because I don't roster him anywhere, so I don't have to worry about it.
Everybody
listen and said
everybody that does.
When I said don't draft in the dead zone, and everybody's calling it the dead zone, whatever, but just don't draft the running backs there. If you did that right now, sure, your second running back's probably not great, but you don't have that mess to deal with as well. The Mike Davis mess, the James Robinson mess. And Jake, yeah, you called it. I mean, it's Carlos Hyde, which makes so much stinking sense. That plus the fact that you have, I mean, they're on the clock. They're on the clock in the 22 NFL draft. The team is awful, and it's not last year where hey, to Doug Marone's credit, he knew a good thing when he had it. All right, let's just feed this kid, and we're on our way out anyway, so let's give him a big year. Urban Meyer's not going to do that, and Urban Meyer's not going to take the stinking USC job. So we're stuck with Urban Meyer, and I think we're stuck with James Robinson now for a while. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm throwing him on the bench.
All right, so you mentioned Barkley. How far up the ranks would you have to go to bench him? Top 15? Like,
no.
Let me think. Daryl Henderson or Saquon Barkley?
Right now I have Saquon. My concern about Henderson is the role starts to gradually reduce because, hey, anybody who, again, used Sony Michel, it was the team was even, they told us, hey, he's getting up to speed on the playbook. But he's getting up to speed on the playbook. They didn't trade for him so that he plays 3 snaps a game. That's not going to happen. So my one concern is that a gradual shift? Is it a dramatic shift? I highly doubt that, but do we start to see some of the early down work go away? And that's really where a lot of the value comes there. So I have him at 19 and 20 right now initially. It is basically a coin flip for me.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up to the second point is that the third running back for snaps was Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, in between Harris and McCaffrey, was Daryl Henderson. Didn't get a touch for Michelle until the fourth quarter. But here's the good thing is where I'm with you on this, Jeff, is I'm not panicking over Henderson for people who are like, oh, my God, so Michelle's going to take touch. 70% is still a terrific number for running backs. Yeah. Like 70% is what, maybe 10 running backs in a year. To get to the 80% threshold is usually like 2 or 3 guys. So I'm okay with 70, which is a 20% point drop, which is still good. Here's the thing that I liked about it, too, and I know he's getting up to speed, but Daryl Henderson also top 5 in goal to go and inside the 5-yard attempts. One of this offense, I don't think they're going to give all of those to Sony Michel. I think Sony Michel will get a taste, but even if they get 4 per game and 2 go to Michel and 2 go to Henderson, the confidence is there is that Henderson can handle those. Obviously, he got the touchdown in a bad matchup, mind you.
Yeah, or they could just start throwing down there.
Oh, please, Matthew Stafford.
That's what I want.
50 touchdowns from Matthew Stafford, we could have that happen.
I would love to see it. I mean, 4 end zone throws in the game. By the way, if you're worried about Robert Woods, 4 targets, okay. 2 of those targets were end zone targets, so still encouraging. I did downgrade him a little bit this week, but at the same time, I'm not panicking. And certainly the worst thing you can do when a player's value is trending down is to try and trade him away because you're not going to get a good return on investment.
Absolutely. All right, so speaking of that, what's your concern level with these two? We already touched on Najee Harris. We touched on Saquon Barkley, but Ezekiel Elliott and Derrick Henry, are they still
none?
Zero, not at all? Not one little inkling of it? Okay.
Ezekiel Elliott faced the toughest run defense in the league, and Derrick Henry, I've called it the Derrick dilemma for a reason. You have these games every so often where the defense does the one thing that you can do to stop Derrick Henry is not allow him to get to the second level. You get him, if he gets to the second level, it's over. No defense in the league can defend him at the second level. He's too big, too fast, too athletic, but you can bottle him up. He is not the most dynamic back before the line of scrimmage. So if you're capable of doing that, like they did in this contest, and obviously they get out to a lead, so game script is not favorable there. You can shut him down. You're going to have a Derrick dilemma week. We're going to get 2 or 3 more of those this year, but I'm not worried at all about him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The Ezekiel Elliott thing, I would say, so I talked about this yesterday too with Lauren, is I do ducks in my waiver column where he's 1 to 5. I gave him a 2 for this very reason. It's just they need him to block. And that's my only concern is instead of seeing 20 touches, does he see 16? But you know what? Still an RB1. Actually, it's funny though, Jeff. You see the overreaction, and of course in the rankings this week, I go, why do you hate Ezekiel Elliott at RB11? Like, he's still RB11. You're starting him everywhere.
You hate him so much, man.
Do you have? I'm assuming you have him inside your top 12, right?
Oh, yeah, I have him at 8.
Okay. Oh yeah, so I definitely hate him. He's the worst.
Hate him. I love him. Why do I love him so much? I don't know.
You're drunk. All right, so let's
Not
talk
yet.
a lot. Not yet. Here, real quick, Matthew DuPont, pick 2 to start. Amari, Deontay Johnson, and Justin Jefferson. Holy crap! Speaking of trading Deontay Johnson when you don't need him, yeah, it's Amari and Jefferson, and find somebody who needs a wide receiver, right, Jeff?
Well, we're just hoard the depth, one or the other. Yeah.
I gotta imagine you gotta probably need running back. Yes, Odell is out again this week. I'm not trying to start anybody else besides Jarvis Landry. Although, how intrigued were you by Anthony Schwartz getting the snaps over Higgins and out there as much as Donovan Peoples-Jones? I know the answer. I'm asking.
It's wild, and that was the perfect game because we saw the comp on the other side of the field. His comp is Nicole Hardman. They're very, very similar because they're the fastest dudes on the field when they step foot on the field, but they weren't really true wide receivers coming into the NFL. Nicole Hardman, very green, still trying to round into form at the pro level. And I mean, Anthony Schwartz, yes, he got drafted because his speed, but he was really like a track and field guy in a football uniform. It's intriguing. I mean, in Dynasty, I'm interested. I'm certainly very interested there. We'll see probably some more of them in this week's contest, and that's a very favorable matchup just across the board for Cleveland. But outside of Dynasty, I mean, it's not redraft worthy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Again, this is kind of similar to, it's not the third option, but it kind of is in a way because I keep saying I don't want the third pass catcher in Tennessee. I don't want the third pass catcher in a lot of these teams. Like, I don't want him in Kansas City, even though we try to do it all the time with Kansas City. It's fun and it's intriguing, but the reality from fantasy value is just not there. I don't really want the second pass catcher with Cleveland because they're all so run heavy. It's that backfield times 2 and then Jarvis Landry, or if it was Odell Beckham's out there. All right, so what else we got to go to? The sticks of running backs, the Lions situation. So it was a split. It was the Anthony Lynn 60-40. But this is good for Swift, right? I mean, it's good for Williams and the concerns that people have, including myself, that Swift might not see 70, 80%. But that Swift got that much work in the first game. Forget the fact a lot of it was garbage time as they almost won the game in the fourth quarter as San Francisco fell asleep. But that kind of usage makes you feel good about Swift, does it not? And Jamal Williams being usable?
Well, with the defense as bad as they are, and they're bad, and they lost Jeff Okudah, and Jeff Okudah wasn't even that good. And if
Devontae Adams is going for 200 this week,
and but we also have a revenge game, so let's not forget that Jamal Williams is going for 200 as well. I think Anthony Lynn should have just sent some kind of memo to the Chargers and said, here's how you use Austin Eckler. And then they just did that instead of not targeting him at all. But I'm encouraged by the usage. You mentioned garbage time. Cool. There's going to be a lot of garbage time. And Jared Goff showed that he's, I guess, a reasonably good garbage time quarterback, enough to get as much as he could out of that offense. I love, it's a tell me you have no wide receivers without telling me you have no wide receivers. Our top 3 targets, Hawkinson, Swift, and Williams, no wide receivers whatsoever, and I am totally fine with that. Hey, if you drafted Swift, he's an RB2 plus. If you drafted Williams, you probably got him at half a deal, and you're going to be able to use him as a flex or better going forward.
All right, so then trade questions for you, because these are some that I've seen, and we have some trade questions I'll get in here real quick. But I'm a little bit shocked by this. DeAndre Swift straight up for Ezekiel Elliott.
Wow. I mean, I'll take Ezekiel Elliott off of somebody's hands if they're panicking.
Swift
I see somebody in here,
Harris.
somebody saying Zeke is washed. That is such an overreaction. I will tell you this before I get to your question. 2 years ago in a home league, I had to tell my friends in a league that Aaron Rodgers doesn't suck. Literally everybody said he sucks. Look at his fantasy points. And it's dude, the team's 13-3. He doesn't suck. And then he wins the MVP the next year. Chill with this guy's washed after one game against the best run defense in the NFL. Chill, bro. Chill. It's week 1. Ezekiel Elliott can still play football.
All right. So did you catch the question or did you need me to repeat it?
I think it was Swift for Harris.
For Najee Harris, yes.
Yeah, I would take Harris in a heartbeat.
Okay. Oh, by the way, I think that season you're talking, that was 2000 what? 19?
Yep.
Yeah. What did he finish? What was it, QB 8 that year? 9? He was still top 10.
Basing any evaluation on fantasy football, Tim Tebow was once a QB1 in fantasy football. We cannot evaluate players. And let's face it, we play this game because we love football, not the other way around, right? So let's at least ground ourselves in knowledge of football first and foremost, and then we can play this game of fantasy instead of just saying a player sucks because he doesn't score touchdowns or something in a given week.
I think, so saying that it was a HTTR, Hail to the Redskins, which they aren't anymore. So it's Hail to the, what? I guess it's HTTWFT. Hail to the Washington football team.
WTF. I'll go with WTF.
We gotta get that. We gotta get a new team for them. Please, can we stop with the WFT? Which, by the way, I know Jeff knows this, which makes us have to redo all of our Excel data polls and all, because that's gonna be fun next year to redo that all again. There was a trade question in here. Oh, should I take? Wait, hold on. Okay, should I take Juju and Gaskin for Corey Davis? So I say yes immediately. I don't even love Gaskin, but I am super high on Corey Davis, but I also think Juju Smith-Schuster is getting too much hate. And here's my concern about Corey Davis. That offensive line. And if Jameis Crowder's back, Zach Wilson's not going to, he's probably going to turn to Crowder a little bit more because he doesn't have time to get to Corey Davis as much as the volume was there. Like, I have serious concerns about this entire Jets offense, which everybody was lauding their offensive line up until week 1. And let's be real, Jeff. I know Becton's a huge loss. But the huge loss of one piece should not make your team go from a quote-unquote, and I say quote-unquote because people are calling him this, a top 5 offensive line to, oh, my God, they suck.
That's very true. I thought the same exact thing of when people were overreacting to Jonathan Taylor, which how'd that work out for everybody? Thanks for giving me him in the second round in a couple best balls.
But he faces the Rams this week, Jeff.
Well, he does. I hope he catches 6 balls again. Sheesh, where did that come from? But, you know, Quentin Nelson's awesome, but losing him doesn't mean you dramatically change your perspective. This trade, I think you are getting more than enough to do it, especially if you need depth. You're leveraging a big week 1 performance. And it's going to be challenging this week. We know Belichick takes out the top option, and he's now basically the top option for that offense. So last week we saw shadow coverage, J.C. Jackson very likely on Corey Davis, and that could put a damper on things this week. So, capitalize, sell high. That's a classic example. And buying low on Juju, I mentioned Ben's arm strength. Well, Juju's going to get targeted like 5 yards downfield, so that doesn't really matter. Juju can have like 100 catches for 600 yards this year, and I'll be fine with it.
Was the only year he hasn't had 7+ touchdowns is the year that he got hurt.
Yeah.
And like even last year was 800 yards and 9 touchdowns. Ben still looks to him, because I had this argument yesterday with Pat Mayo when he was saying that, let me ask you this, Jeff, most weeks, I know it'll differ, but in most weeks, and I don't care if you disagree with me either, this is just how I would go. Most weeks, I would go Deontay, Juju, Claypool, because Claypool is third in snaps and touchdown reliant. Juju is touchdown reliant as well, but at least he's out there 20% more than Claypool is.
I mean, it's really close because you have to balance ceiling and floor. So Claypool, I think the other thing that it's the deep ball target reliancy. Last week, an average depth of target of 12.2 yards for Claypool, which is double what Ben was throwing on average. So that means Ben had a lot of throws even shorter than that. But I want to see a guy like Claypool in the 14.5, 15 range, not the 12.5 is kind of a prototype X receiver range, like a DeAndre Hopkins or somebody like that. It should be higher than that for him, because that's really where he should be seeing like Mike Evans targets, where 14.5, 15 yards downfield, making those bigger plays. I don't know if Ben can deliver that. Yeah. So I think
that's why I lean Juju, because if we had a different quarterback, heck,
we had Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was chucking that ball downfield.
I was going to say, as terrible as he's looked and the offensive line stinks, if you had Daniel Jones, like if you had somebody with an arm, like I would like Claypool more. Before I get to some of the more of these situations, I want to pull up this question. You don't have to see it there if you want, Tino, because it's kind of in the middle, but I don't know how to say your first name. Eowyn? Harrigan is your last name. And again, my answer is probably going to sound like I'm coming after you, but I want to put this out there and get Jeff's thoughts in general, because it's week 2. So the question is, would you trade Najee Harris and Damian Harris for CMC? I always want to get the best player, But the problem here, Jeff, is his second running back becomes Gaskin. It's week 2, and if the one thing that I'm not doing in week 2 is trading away valuable top 20 running back depth unless I'm getting a hell of an offer back. And for me, a hell of an offer back would be CMC plus. I know it's CMC, but you're giving away an RB1 and an RB2 for CMC. It's just maybe if this is week 9, but I'm not doing it in week 2. I'm not giving away my running back depth already.
Yeah, you make a great point. The point of a trade, and is this a fair trade? Sure. I mean, people are going to complain in every league about every trade ever, which is why vetoes suck. But the point of the trade is to make your team better. Getting McCaffrey will help, but I think the overall effect is making your team slightly worse. So I agree 100% here. I don't want to give away, especially with Harris, Damian Harris, that is. I know people are concerned. I actually had people ask me if they should drop him. Did he not have 100 rushing yards, 23 carries? I know he fumbled.
That's all that people remember is the fumble.
Like, guys, J.J. Taylor is 5'6", 185 pounds. He is not an early down back. He's closer to James White than he is to Damian Harris or certainly Ramondre Stevenson. So there's still no competition for touches in that backfield. They placed their chips on Damian Harris as soon as they sealed that deal to trade Sony Michel away. So yeah, keep the depth, man. He's not in a bad spot. And Jake, what did you rank him last week? I mean, he finished his RB22 in PPR. It's kind of close to where we ranked him anyway, so our expectations were met.
He was in our side, or like top 20, 24 at the least. Yeah. He was right in this. That's exactly, no, I actually had somebody in the comments tell me TJ Taylor was coming for his job, and I'm like, that'd be impressive because I don't even know who that is.
Just making up guys.
Yeah. So let's see. What else? Denver running backs. How similar to Detroit is this in the fact that we can trust both? And I know, so here's 2 parts of the equation is what I say, Jeff, is up until that run for Melvin Gordon, if you're watching the game, Javonte Williams looks better than Melvin Gordon. The box score, when you're done, says Melvin Gordon. Are you still Javonte over Melvin Gordon? And if so, are you still now confident enough that Gordon's getting enough of a share that you can start both of them as flex running backs?
Yes, to the last question, but I don't have Melvin Gordon on any roster, so I don't have to make that decision. Don't do the sort by last week's fantasy points, see, and then say, okay, this guy is the better of the options. Don't do that to yourself. It's Bush League.
Well, that's what we're
amateur.
here for.
Yeah, well, that's true. We do have a job because of that, but don't do it to yourself. Let everybody else do that.
Oh, I wasn't trying to talk down to them. I was saying, like, we provide the information so they don't have to only look at box scores. Come on, Jeff, be nicer.
Well, hey, I'm with it here. All right. So yeah, and he had more carries too. Javonte Williams, that is. So I don't think anything has changed here. Gordon ripped off a long run. Sell high if you can. You're not going to be able to probably give him away just by himself to get something better. But if you can leverage him plus a piece and maybe upgrade somewhere else or maybe upgrade in both spots, do it. Sell high on Melvin Gordon. I do think you can use both as flex, but I'd much rather have Javonte Williams for the long haul.
All right, so I got 3 questions back to back to back, and I'm glad because they're like conversations I want to bring up and talk about. So the first, at 222, Tino, Phil Mike, Sutton or Robbie in a half-point PPR. So, Jeff, I broke this down yesterday. I did it in the waiver column, and I keep saying this is like, so the Giants secondary, the misnomer about the Giants is they just stink. Their secondary is top 10. You could argue that the duo of Jackson and Bradbury is at least top 10, if not potentially top 5. But here's their flaw, Jeff, and this is what I keep bringing up, is they are very man-contested, stick to guys like Cortland Sutton, like if Kenny Golladay was on the other side. Where do they struggle is the Judy types, the ones that can break ankles, which is probably not the best thing to say in this case, but can get into space, that can manipulate the coverage. And I was going to bring up Melvin Gordon to say, as you see, James Bradbury got outrun by Melvin Gordon at the end of the game. So this is where I'm going with it, Jeff. There's one, avoid Giants if you have a tough call and if it's a wide receiver like Sutton. Terry McLaurin should have a field day on Thursday night. But 2, I still like Sutton long term because he looks healthy, and that's all I care about with Sutton.
Yeah, Sutton was he did have Bradbury on him for a good chunk of the game. It was well over 50% of the snaps. Now, he did travel with him, so it wasn't just he's playing his spot and he saw him over 50% of the time. but he didn't travel with him the entire game. So I'm calling that shadow coverage. It's not backyard football where you literally follow somebody around the entire game in that shadow. They did have him shadowing, and that did cause Teddy to go away from Sutton for a good chunk of the action. But I agree with you as well. I actually don't have in the wide receiver cornerback matchup tool over at FTNFantasy.com, I don't have McLaurin being shadowed by anybody. I think they do play their sides in this one because of the profile of McLaurin. I think Sutton's fine. And to answer that question, it is Sutton for me over Anderson. I think we're going to see more balls going his way this week. And I think, people are going to make a lot over week 1, but they really shouldn't.
Okay, so this comes back to week 1 and a back-to-back question here is Tino, so you don't have to put them up because it's 2 separate questions, same topic. The first question is, are you still high on Mike Davis? I know that's specifically for me because you're not. But the question to that is the very next one is worried about Calvin Ridley. And I want to talk about the Falcons, and that's really why. So Falcons come out of week 1, one of the most miserable performances, them, the Packers, the Titans. There was a lot of bad performances in week 1, but the Falcons, I'm not concerned at all about Calvin Ridley. It was a poor performance from Matt Ryan. He was under pressure quite a bit, and maybe that's a concern over the long haul. But at the same time, Calvin Ridley's still going to be top 10 in targets. Mike Davis, I'm not that concerned. Again, we had an argument, and Jeff was lower than I was, but it wasn't like I was putting Mike Davis as a top 15 running back. I'm still okay with him because Cordell Patterson, a lot of that run for the box score as a whole, again, that's another one. The box score, you're going to see it and you're going to be like, oh my God, Cordell Patterson had half his job. Cordell Patterson got most of his run when they were already down 3 scores. Like they were, by halftime, they were already down quite a bit. And then immediately in the third quarter is kind of really where it came on. So I know you were lower in Davis, but so just attack the Falcons as a whole. Is how worried are you about the Falcons? Ridley, Pitts, Davis, even Matt Ryan in a super flex.
I don't think I am that worried. I want to see what happens. Like this is a first-time head coach. We know Matt Ryan does tend to struggle a little bit under a new offensive system each time. We've seen it multiple times during the course of his career. But he's still going to throw the football. And you had 8 targets for Ridley. And anybody who's worried about Kyle Pitts, don't look at fantasy points when it comes to tight ends. Look at targets. He had 8 targets. Kyle Pitts is going to be
up out wide
fine.
again.
Yeah, and he really looks like a wide receiver. He does not look like a tight end on the field. He's going to be just fine. Now, Mike Davis, is Mike Davis, low upside guy who's going to see heavy volume. And really, they didn't show anything that's going to change that here. They ran into a very good Eagles run defense in a very bad game script. So, of course, the numbers aren't going to look great, but he's still going to at least see volume if you do have him. I think we give the Falcons the first month of the season. If we're talking in week 5 and Calvin Ridley's still catching 4 balls for 40 yards a game or whatever it ends up being, then yeah, now we have to push the panic button. But I don't think that's how it's going to turn out after the first month.
All right. I'm laughing at this question. Jeff, has nothing to do with fantasy football. Are Pop-Tarts dessert raviolis?
I have no idea. I think they make dessert raviolis.
But, I mean, technically, I'm going to say yes. Yes, Justin.
But are Pop-Tarts Italian?
Especially the bite ones, the Pop-Tart bites. I mean,
Pop-Tortas or something?
Yeah. Yes, Justin, they are. I agree with you 100% on this one. I want to bring up Julio Jones to this conversation to come back to Derrick Henry because there's a question here. Julio Jones or Mike Williams the rest of the season. That's already where we're at after a week 1 overreaction. Yeah. Look, I will love, there's 2 parts to this, Jeff. I would love one if Mike Williams could stay healthy, which, by the way, thank you, Mike Williams, for falling on your back only once. That's actually an accomplishment to not have himself thrown into the ground, and that's why he keeps getting hurt. But on this flip side of it, I wanted to pull this question out because more of Julio Jones, because more of what's been talked about in that game, Jeff, is that the Arthur Smith departure, they went from plus 30% play action to low teens. That's been talked about a lot this week. I know you've seen it as well. That's a big thing for quarterbacks in general. Like, I don't care if you're Ryan Tannehill. I don't care if you're Tom Brady. I don't care if you're Jared Goff. It matters because you give that defense that 1 second of hesitation and it opens things up. It's just why play action is play action, especially when you have effing Derrick Henry in the backfield, which would make people take a second pause if you possibly think they're running. But all that being said, do you think that this team, the offensive coordinator, because I said if it doesn't happen by the end of September, he's out of a job. I can't think of his name right now. I'm drawing a blank. But that, one, this is just, they have to be smart enough to not go down this road again, and that Julio Jones is a good buy low.
The saying is everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and the Titans got punched in the mouth very early in that game. Arizona came out firing on all cylinders. So I don't know what their ultimate plan was, and maybe it was to have more play action involved, but once that game script kind of got out of hand, they couldn't really do much. So it's just another one where I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I want to make sure we give them at least a couple games before we start freaking out here. Yes, Julio Jones is a buy low. He does look like he needs to get on the same page with Ryan Tannehill, but the Titans just need a game where they can kind of just be the Titans again, and that wasn't week 1. Week 1 and week 2 are basically an extension of the preseason as it is. So just give that one a little bit of time. As for Mike Williams, this is the same Mike Williams that people weren't even willing to draft. Mike Williams, who was on far too many waiver wires, and now our opinion has completely dramatically shifted after 1 week. Let's chill with that as well. It's an encouraging development like you. I believe in the talent. I just don't believe in the ability to stay healthy. So let's see what happens with him. Mike Williams should absolutely be on rosters. And this week, given the performance from last week, given the matchup, I think he could be a wide receiver 3 or a flex option for a lot of people, but not going overboard ahead of Julio Jones.
Okay. A couple quick fire ones for you, Jeff. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, buy low because he was out there. And by the way, everybody, Daryl Williams, 1 touch. Like, I'm looking at this game, Jeff, and saying, this is what we wanted for Edwards-Helaire. I know he didn't score. I know he didn't get 100 total yards, but all but 1 touch out of that backfield. Yes, please. Thank you. This is what we wanted.
Yeah, we just now want a favorable game script. We don't want them playing behind for 53 minutes or whatever it was in that game. They're out to a lead. That's great. And Cleveland's defense is a good defense. So, yeah, buy low. Absolutely buy low. He's just negatively correlated to the passing game. Anytime they have a big passing game day, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not going to be that great. But I still believe that this year is the year that he does break out, that Andy Reid takes the training wheels off of it.
All right, so here's another one for you real quick. The Baltimore situation, we've already touched on it, but I'm going to present it this way for you, Jeff. Is there anything we can hear from beat reporters that cover the practices, anything we hear from the coaches? Is there anything that can be said by Sunday that makes you think Latavius Murray is definitively in front of Tyson Williams after just 1 week? Like, because we've talked about this before. This is kind of, and I know you're chuckling, but this is going to preseason. You know, we hear like, oh, this guy looks great. This guy looks great. But what does it mean? So that's where I'm saying this. Is there anything coming out of the practices where you will say, you know what, I'm putting Latavius in front of Tyson?
There'd probably be only one thing, and it would have to be Harbaugh himself saying it.
Okay.
Otherwise, he was just signed last week. I actually thought it was pretty remarkable he saw as many touches as he did, but he was just signed last week. Tyson Williams has been around the block with the team for a little bit longer, and again, I'm not confident across the board. I know people want to jump all over this, but in some instances, Jake, we've seen this in the past, right, where you have a starter, or in this case, even a number 2 who was going to be a reasonably good fantasy option. Once they get beyond that point, maybe there's just no fantasy value to be had. And I think that's the question that people aren't asking. Like, what if this is just a wash? What if this is just a crap situation and we're going to be stuck in this all season where it's back and forth and this guy, and especially if Devonta Freeman gets in the mix here or Le'Veon Bell. I mean, it could just be very frustrating. But, yeah, I think the only thing that would tell me that Latavius Murray is going to see more snaps would be Harbaugh himself saying it.
Okay. Let's move to a couple wide receiver situations before we get some streamers for you guys. See if we have time for any more questions. Real quick, Alex, I saw it yesterday, too. I'm not doing the All In Sports podcast anymore. I put it on hiatus. And from the telling of the first 2 weeks already, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring it back for guests. And these are set company-wide, so to just kind of give you an answer there. But I just want to sorry, everybody. I just want to answer his question because he posted yesterday, too. And he's a loyal follower, so I definitely want to shout out for that. Wide receiver situations. Buccaneers. It's 1 week. But is it enough, similar to Pittsburgh situation, is it enough for you to have a ranking of how you feel overall? Because after 1 week and after what we saw in December, it kind of feels like it might be Godwin, Brown, then Evans. But how do you go? I see you're shaking your head, and that's why.
If it was Godwin, Brown, then Evans, why in the world would the Cowboys shadow Evans with Trayvon Diggs? I think we should take NFL teams at how they prioritize it. And Tom Brady, I don't know if you know this, Jake. He's a seasoned veteran. He's played in the NFL for quite some time. He wasn't going to throw at that matchup. Okay, cool. You're going to shadow him. Guess what? We have 3 guys, 2 of them who are surefire future Hall of Famers who are still good enough to play at a high level. We're going to kill you with those 2 guys and one of the best young receivers in the NFL. Good luck. Have fun with that. Shadow him all you want. Take him out of the game. We don't need him anyway. Now, are other defenses going to do that? I don't think so. Historically, that was the recipe, because if you take Evans out, you really only then had to defend, essentially, historically, before Brady and everybody else came in, you only had to defend Godwin. Well, you can't get away with that now.
Right.
So I still think, Godwin and Evans are neck and neck like they've been all along for me. And Brown, I did move up because the one thing I was worried about was a lot of 12 personnel. We did not see that. We saw a lot of 11 personnel. And if they're going to use a lot of 11 personnel, then Antonio Brown is going to be – he's certainly going to be a top 30, probably top 25, and maybe even better than that.
All of them. That is Shakamahala. Cincinnati, same situation. Is it 1 week enough for you to say it's Higgins, Chase, Higgins, and Boyd is the concern of the odd man out? Because for me – that was the concern 2 months ago, and then we had hey, by the way, I don't know if you know this, Jeff, but Chase can catch balls. He's not gonna drop any of them. Yeah, but I think this is one where I know it is 1 week, and maybe it's a confirmation bias on my part. I completely agree with you. The Bucs, we've had conversations, we're on the same page on most of these, but it might be confirmation bias for me, but I'm going to what I saw, and what I saw in that game is Boyd is more likely. There will be weeks just like the Panthers last year where Boyd has the biggest week. But if I'm picking the third option every single week until further notice, is Tyler Boyd for me.
Yeah, and I got a lot of questions in the draft season regarding Tyler Boyd, and I just thought it was kind of a no-brainer. You take the 2 guys with the higher ceiling. Boyd doesn't have a high ceiling. He's a good football player, no doubt about it, and a great resource for that team to have on the field. But I am so glad Ja'Marr Chase got out and showed you, okay, the uniform's on, the lights are on, the game is going. Now I'm going to show up and show you what I can actually do.
You know what Chase was doing? He's that pool hall guy. And he's like, oh, what is this game? You want to put $500 on it? Oh, look, now I can play. He was just completely sandbagging everybody. We talked about Corey Davis. Between Brandon Cooks and Corey Davis, who more likely do you have confidence in full season?
Ooh, that's a good one. I actually think it's Brandon Cooks. I thought that looked great, man. How about the Texans? Great. They lost their 3 franchise players, right? Hopkins in the last year and a half. Hopkins traded. J.J. Watt gone, and Watson, for all intents and purposes, gone. That's devastating to an organization. The coach regime switches over. And you wouldn't have known it. Now, granted, they were playing the Jags. Like I said, the Jags are basically already on the clock for 2022. But they destroyed them. Like, it wasn't a close game. Like, they showed we are clearly the better team on the football field today. I think this is going to be good. I loved how Tyrod Taylor looked. He was looking at Cooks like crazy. Cooks is going to see some heavy volume this season.
All right, so 2 more sets of wide receivers. It's fun. These are all these trios of wide receivers we get to talk about already. Will Fuller makes his debut. Miami wide receivers, as of today, how would you rank them? Or is it going to be completely independent and it'll be matchup only? Like matchup as in every single week it might change for you, Jeff.
I wouldn't rule that out, but I still think I have to go how I had it all along, which is Fuller, Waddle, Parker. Parker was used a lot last week because they needed to, but he doesn't quite have that, he doesn't have that upside, that juice. He's more of a contested catch guy than a separation guy. And I think the 2 separation guys are where it's going to be more appealing for Tua. So I still believe in Fuller as the top guy.
Okay. How about Jacksonville? After week 1, DJ Shark officially 100% back.
Yes.
I was hesitant. Everybody knows this. I'm like a Shark guy. Whether it's Shark or Shark, I still tweeted him. He didn't answer. I want the answer from DJ, Shark or Shark. I want to know how we're supposed to say your damn last name, because there's a report in college that says it's supposed to be Shark. A lot of announcers say Shark. We don't know. Please answer me, DJ Shark. I just want to know for clarification purposes. Actually, I don't know if you know this, Jeff. When people were saying Tariq Cohen coming out of college, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Tariq. And I found a video of his mom saying Tariq Cohen. So I was like, oh, there we go. I got the mom. That's all we need. Maybe I can find DJ Chark's mom somewhere. But anyway, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault. Is this one set in stone after 1 week?
I was once told by the former punter, I don't think he's in the league right now, Marquette King is actually how you say his name, not Marquette King.
Marquette King. Ooh.
Right from his mouth. Marquette King is actually how you say his name. There's a lot of guys like that, I suppose.
Travis Kelce's telling us all of a sudden it's Kels. Remember that?
Everybody now is back to calling him Tyrod Taylor after he even said it was Tyrod Taylor. Anyway, I digress.
RJJ Arthego-Whiteside, by the way.
That's true. That is the Spaniard pronunciation. I think it is. So I have it Chark, Shenault, Jones, and I literally have them within 10 spots of each other because I do think that they're going to bounce around a little bit, but I would have the most confidence if I had Chark.
Okay. By the way, also like Travis Etienne, even though he himself says it's Etienne, if you actually go by the pronunciation of that last name, it's actually Etienne. So there you go. He's actually even pronouncing it wrong. So I don't know if you know
Campbell doesn't say his first name right either. Calais Campbell is Calais.
The former running back is actually a Raymond Calais, and not Calais.
It is Calais. It's the French pronunciation. It's a region in France too.
You've all been saying my last name wrong. It's actually Jake Brown, just so you know, like the skateboarder, just in case you're wondering. So how about before we get out of here, Jeff, let me see if there's any more questions. Let me see if there's any more questions before we get to our potential streamers of the week. Here's a good one. Would you trade Eckler for Najee Harris? That's not a buy low in my opinion, because I know you mentioned it. It was kind of offhand while we were talking about it. Like, hey, get Eckler those pass catches he's so good at. But here's the good thing, Jeff. He was getting goal line carries.
Yeah.
So if the catches come back, I am still 100% on the Austin Eckler train. I think he has top 5 potential still.
Only one back was targeted. It was Justin Jackson, who barely played. Larry Roundtree doubled up Jackson in snaps. And
do you think Roundtree is officially the backup? Sorry to cut you off.
I think he was all along, and the beat had it wrong. When the beat was telling us Jackson, for some reason, people were still holding out on Joshua Kelly, who last year was thoroughly outplayed by Kalen Ballage. I think that was all the information we needed to know on Joshua Kelly. But yeah, I do think it was Roundtree. If you're hurting in leagues that are somewhat deeper, like 12-team with a reasonable size bench, Roundtree's not a terrible stash because we saw Eckler is already banged up, and it feels like it's always a matter of time with him.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at it. Like, I don't want to really bring up his name, but it's still funny. Ray Rice is actually Ray Quinoa. Like, just because they're rice quinoa. I did laugh at that. I'm a dad joke without having a family, so I'll just... All right, potential streamers for this week, Jeff. QBs. I'm going Teddy Bridgewater because I'm going to attack the living hell of the Jaguars any possible chance I can get. And as we just saw against the Giants, what do we know from Teddy last year? He is basically the Tyrod, T-Rod, like whatever you want to call him. He's that... Fine, I'm going to get a QB mid-level 2. And the only reason he was on my list, Jeff, is because a lot of streaming quarterback options have pretty bad matchups this week.
Yeah, and still the waiver wire is a little too picked over in a lot of leagues where you have people drafting backup quarterbacks. Invariably, they're going to drop those guys. If it doesn't happen in week 1, it happens week 2, week 3. So then you start to get the normal streamers in there. Because I would love to say Jameis. He's just not available in enough leagues.
No.
Unfortunately. So I went with
Too
Mac
many people
Jones.
listen to us.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Everybody, all 60 million Americans who play fantasy football. I did go with Mac Jones. I don't care if he doesn't want the ball after his first touchdown. I liked how he looked, and I do like the matchup. If you're going to go after a secondary, go after a bad secondary. He was it 280 whatever yards? That's solid out of him. He has good receiving options. He was going short to Myers. He was going a little bit longer to Aguilar. Obviously got the 2 tight ends involved. You have James White in the mix out of the backfield. All of it really works well. So if you're in a pinch, and he is out there in enough leagues where I think you could get away with streaming him. I do agree with you, though. Teddy is the top one.
All right, so let's talk tight ends, because as you can see, most of the show, the conversation is going to be running backs and wide receivers. You have your quarterbacks, you have your tight ends. If you don't have the top guys, I'm going to make this kind of like a staple, like going forward, because we don't need to spend a ton of time on do I start this quarterback or this quarterback. Which, by the way, again, one more time, make sure you're checking out Jeff Ratcliffe at FTN. Listen to a SiriusXM show. theathletic.com/BetsTV, all capitals. You can get a first free month. A thumbs up, 5 stars, rate, review, subscribe, do all those good things, because the more of that we get, the more free shows you get on BetsTV, and we can really get out there for you guys. So before we get out of here, Jeff, tight end potential streamers, I'll let you go first this time. I see the name you have there. I'm not saying his name. this the name that I picked in the first week and begrudgingly did so because I hate this guy from past years. But as always, Jeff, at one point, everybody has value, and he turned into a value this year because nobody wanted him finally.
Yeah, Jared Cook. And this is a play where I would rather have Jared Cook over Juwan Johnson. I'd rather have Jared Cook over Gerald Everett. I would rather have Jared Cook over, I'm trying to think of another one-catch touchdown tight end.
Let's talk about the fact Juwan Johnson was out there for 12 snaps.
Yes, he had 3 targets. He caught two touchdowns, caught all 3.
I'll give you this.
Troutman had 5 targets. I mean,
Jared Cook versus the Cleveland tight ends, plural.
If you could just combine them into one like Voltron, just get all those guys. How is it possible they have 50 tight ends on a 53-man roster?
They're not even using Harrison Bryant.
So annoying. Yeah, they're using all of them. It is so annoying. But yeah, Jared Cook, Donald Parham, 1 target in that game. So as much as people want him to be a thing, I don't know if it's going to be a thing. He had 8 targets. Follow the targets. Don't necessarily follow the touchdowns. Heck, James O'Shaughnessy, right? He had 8 targets as well. That was really surprising. He's out there all over the place, and I would rather him taking a shot on the volume than the touchdowns with Gerald Everett or with Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would actually even go Cook over Gesicki, who, by the way, was losing snaps to Durham Smythe, who, by the way, is the exact concern. I wasn't expecting it to be that bad, but it was the concern of Jalen Waddle, and now Gesicki is out of kind of position. But I, even so, wasn't expecting it to be that bad, and that's how bad it is. So mine is what I actually changed my name from to now. I changed it to, I told Jeff before we started the show, because of Aaron Rodgers and his quote, I changed my team name to Double Nut Shot for the time being. It was commitment issues, Cole Comet. I had a little reservations for week 1 because I just wasn't sure how much Jimmy Graham was going to be pushed aside, and he was essentially pushed aside completely. Comet out there for 50 snaps, and he gets Cincinnati this week. So Cole Comet, you think Cole Comet could be a tight end 1 this year, Jeff?
It doesn't take that much to be a tight end 1. I think it's possible, especially when Fields eventually takes over. My prediction is that Andy Dalton gets that sweet, sweet, sweet taste of revenge. He rides off into the sunset. He's running out of the field like Joe Namath winning the darn Super Bowl, and he retires and says, you can have Justin Fields now after that win.
Jeff, we should double down because it's not just a revenge game. It's also a contract year game. Because he's on a 1-year contract. It's contract year, revenge, fire up Andy Dalton, winning championships this week. You know what? I got to get out of there on this question, Jeff. You just made me think of something real quick. Would you rather stash right now Fields or Lance?
Oh, man, it's like 50-50.
I say Fields. I think Fields hits I think he hits the field faster.
I don't know, man. I have both. I literally got asked that question earlier. But the question was, should I drop Lance for Fields? And I just said no, just hang on to Lance for right now. Like you're taking a shot, and that's the whole point. I don't know who starts earlier because I still buy in on Matt Nagy's stubbornness. And I think we're going to see more Andy Dalton than we want to see.
Week 5 for Fields, by the way, Alex. Week 5 is, if you look at their schedule, I think that has to be the cutoff point. I don't disagree with you on Matt Nagy. It's Andy Dalton. Like, that game alone should have just been enough for them to be like, pull the ripcord. I don't know what we're doing here, but hopefully you are doing and listening to us every single week. Again, as a reminder, Mondays are the recap with Chris Meany at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. on Tuesdays with Lauren to talk waivers. If you missed both of those, you can go back and watch. Heck, you can watch them at 1.5 speed so you can get through them quickly. And follow Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe. We'll be back next Wednesday to talk week 3 rankings, and hopefully everybody's 2-0, and hopefully everybody enjoys it. See you later, guys.